pasta. And then I kept salting it, and I was like, this feels like it should be tasting like something.
No way.
And then like I finally went away the moment I ate. And I was like, it's like a cruel joke.
All right, looks like we're starting, everyone. How's it going? All right, so this is what we call Bring It In. The idea is that we're going to talk about basketball, and people can be socially isolated at home and not feel alone. But in fact, we're barely talking about basketball today. I'm super excited about it. We are joined right now. David Thorpe is at a coaching clinic. We have instead, my most embarrassing prep question I didn't ask you, Noah. Can you please say your last name for me? I know I mispronounced it for a decade.
Galuten.
Galuten.
Yeah.
Noah Galuten is here. We're going to join him in his kitchen in LA shortly. But first, David Epstein. You may know him as the author of this book. How are you, David?
I'm well. And also, there's Adam Alter, the psychologist at NYU, and I always trade like findings of nominative determinism. You know, this idea that like people do things that are associated with like their name. And I feel like gluten, it's basically gluten, is like a pretty good one for.
I've gotten those jokes for a while now.
No way. I thought it was the first one.
No, I was trying to be nice about your joke. All right, so David, we talked over the weekend about like you're kind of saving the world. What's going on with that?
Well, I'm not, and you're helping me with this. So it turns out in the last chapter of Range, I wrote about a guy named Arturo Casadevall, who is maybe the most influential immunologist in the world. He's a super interesting guy. He's a Cuban immigrant. He has a degree in pest control because his father wanted him to always have something to fall back on. He worked at McDonald's for a while and always talks about that in his job interviews. He's just this like collection of experiences and skills. And now he happens to be the head of immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And he's a huge history buff, so I was writing about people with these myriad interests and how in the last chapter, how that even provides a competitive advantage, even for people in something as specialized as microbiology and immunology. And so you can hardly talk to him for a minute without learning something about history. And so as soon as, the pandemic started spreading, he had this idea. He's a, just polymathic basically about science history. And he knew that in epidemics, late 19th century, early 20th century, before vaccines, the doctors sometimes realized that you could treat people with the blood plasma, that's the liquid part of the blood, not the blood cells, from people who had recovered, because those people will usually produce antibodies to fight the infection. And those can then be given to another person. That's why people get some immunity after they've had it. Essentially, you can basically take that immunity, give it to someone else, and it can either prevent the condition from developing or treat them once they've got it. And because we already have the infrastructure for this, right? Like a huge number of institutions have the infrastructure for collecting blood, doing, pheresis, which is taking off the blood cells, storing that blood and transfusing it into someone else. He wrote an op-ed about an outbreak of measles in the 1930s at a school that was stopped by a school physician who realized very quickly that you could do this with one of the kids and prevented an outbreak. And measles is like way more contagious than COVID-19. Measles is something like, 90% of people who don't have immunity who come into contact with someone will get it. And so he wrote this Wall Street Journal op-ed about that, and it prompted this huge flood of interest from peer institutions. And so within like a week, 20 institutions around the country said, let's collaborate on this. We all have storage and we can collect. They have a call with the FDA today to see if they can get, super rapid approval for a clinical trial. And if this works, and some of the early data out of China shows that almost everyone who gets COVID-19 produces some antibodies. So there should be a lot of helpful donors. And this could be a really, a stopgap treatment before we have a vaccine, because it could be done, as early as like late spring or early summer going into actual effect.
You say done, you mean approved or distributed? No,
I mean, they could do, if the clinical trial gets approved today,
yeah,
they could do the trial in a matter of weeks, right? Because they can collection and things like that, they're already used to. So the whole trial could be done in a matter of weeks. And you could start rolling it out quite quickly. I mean, I think the earliest that they thought they might be able to start treating people would be like end of next month, which is not very far, but certainly by May or June. And that's presumably much sooner than we're going to have. I think the timeline that people have been saying for a vaccine would be 12 to 18 months, and that would be like a world record. speed. And so it's this potentially promising kind of stopgap treatment, but of course they have to go through a clinical trial to see if it actually works. And Henry, one of the reasons I contacted you is because I know sort of two of the team leaders on this, Arturo Casadevall and Mike Joyner from the Mayo Clinic. And Mike contacted me and was like, the traditional funding mechanisms are going to be they're moving slower than normal in some cases and are going to be too slow for this. So, if you know people who are interested, we'd be happy to talk to them. And they think the traditional mechanisms will catch up, but they want to get started as soon as possible.
So we're looking for money.
Yeah, looking to get started, and then I think the more traditional mechanisms will catch up. And some of their institutions are already putting in some money. It's just they want to ramp up really, really fast, and so they want some sort of emergency money to just get going as quickly as possible.
And you thought about the NBA a little bit in that.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, I've been following the NBA story, right? Like I was a little raised an eyebrow when I saw the first story where the Jazz got like 60 people or whatever tested, and it was like half the state of Oklahoma's testing for the day. And on the one hand, that was annoying. On the other hand, I think it did a heck of a public communication service. I think the NBA story really got a lot of people to take this a lot more seriously. And since the NBA has been so central to it, Mike Joyner, this physiologist and anesthesiologist at the Mayo Clinic, has also done some really seminal work on human physical performance. And he's an NBA fanatic, right? And so he first contacted me and was like, the NBA has been so central to the way the public has been digesting this story. Maybe someone over there would be interested in sort of providing an emergency grant. Maybe they'll benefit from the treatments too. And so when I thought of that, then I contacted a few people I know in the NBA, and then I contacted you because I knew you'd know better people. And so, so you and I have been doing a little networking the last couple of days in the hope of dragging up some donors and making a contribution that way.
So we're on these funny email threads with like, brilliant doctors, and I'm trying to rope in rich people, I guess. But and it's hilarious because we're a couple of writer journalists in the middle of this thing, which is so ridiculous. And then I reread that chapter of your book last night, and ironically, it's called Deliberate Amateurs.
That's us. Well, amateur, the original meaning of amateur wasn't derogatory. It's a person who actually really loves an activity.
Oh,
so it only became and it's all this stuff, it's very culturally telling. I just wrote an afterword for the book, and I start with, the phrase sort of jack of all trades, master of none, which is obviously an insult. But the long version is jack of all trades, master of none, oftentimes better than master of one. But we've obviously lopped off the end. But the first written use of that as an insult was actually Johannes factotum in New Latin. And it was used as an insult by a playwright to insult some other guy who didn't have a higher education and was a poet and was trying to write plays and help run a theater company and dabbling in acting and all this stuff. So he was just doing a little of everything. And that guy turned out to be William Shakespeare. So like the first written use of that insult, the guy turned out okay.
Noah, you're on notice. I want Latin references to Shakespeare when you talk too, okay?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
In the chat, Randy.
Also, we all knew it was Shakespeare.
Well, of course. It was I would have just been in. That guy was just like this. He didn't do anything. they nailed him.
How much money are they looking to raise, David?
I think when I asked Mike what they would need to like go through a full year in the ideal case, the ballpark estimate was like 30 million basically. But they do think later in the year that they'll get some of that from the more traditional funding mechanisms once those catch up, as they're putting it. So I think they're in the very short term looking for, something in the lower seven figures than that in the millions. But I think everything helps because the more they can get, the more technicians they can employ, the more donors they can take. And so I think and I think that's going to be critical in these coming weeks, right? Because I think looks like cases are probably about to explode. Health workers don't have enough personal protective equipment. And so maybe they're going to want something that might protect them. So I think it's like speed is of the essence here.
I spent time reading like the Q&A that you sent and the Wall Street Journal column, et cetera. And it sort of washed over me the idea that this is, that making a severe disease less severe is awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's for sure. And I mean, I think there's some, ideally when they would take this blood plasma with antibodies, they would actually, and I think they plan to do this if they get enough resources, screen it for those people who are producing the most antibodies and then use the best stuff. And if that's the case, then one person who has good antibody production can treat more than one person who has or would get the disease, and eventually then maybe you do synthetic sort of drugs. But no, I think that's absolutely right. Like this disease, one of the strange things about it is it's the spectrum of what people get when they get, like, some people have no symptoms. I think it was like, did Donovan Mitchell have like no symptoms whatsoever? He was just,
So far, I think, yeah.
And then there are other people, I think I just saw yesterday, was it like a 44-year-old, the guy who started the Above the Law blog, which is like a really popular legal blog, is like 44 and runs marathons and is, in like intensive care.
Yeah.
So I think the range of, symptoms people are getting is unusual.
It's huge. Randy has another question, which is a good one that I know you've been hearing, which is, couldn't Mike Bloomberg or the Gates Foundation just write a check for all this and make it happen tomorrow?
They're in touch with the Gates Foundation, stuck in a little bit of a bureaucratic dance, I think. And also those foundations, I think, are having this huge influx. So much stuff is needed. Like, people who don't have jobs need to eat. Healthcare workers, really, there's a huge lack of even things as simple as masks and things like that. So I think there's a huge number of requests that are pouring in. And I'm trying to help with one of those connections with the Bloomberg Foundation to sort of jump over the normal way that things work. So I think that may come through, but I don't think those things are going to come through like this week or next week. But I think they may come through at a certain point. But I think those foundations, particularly Gates, and Bloomberg, because they've sort of had a history of being interested in public health, are being absolutely bombarded right now by requests.
And they have real protocols and forms need to be filled out and oversight has to happen and due diligence, et cetera, right? So I guess that the fund something tomorrow isn't really their model.
Yeah, that's not. And so, and I think everyone's going to try to work on a new model. Like, I think the FDA, so again, we'll see what happens with their conversation today, but I think the hope is that they will essentially just relax some of their normal strictures, which are put in place to protect the public, but may not be compatible with having to move this fast. So I think the hope is that in this case, they will just relax some of those. And I think there's a good chance of that, one, because it's an emergency, but also because essentially what Arturo and his team are proposing is blood transfusion. And all of these things, blood transfusion is incredibly highly regulated. And so all of the facilities that are already in place to do it are already very, very highly regulated. So I think it has a better chance than some of the other novel therapies that are being proposed of getting this sort of expedited FDA decision, basically. But if the FDA decides to stick to sort of all the normal procedures, then it's going to be slower. But also he's a very well-known quantity to them also, so I think that'll help.
What do you? I mean, you know more about this than I do. What do you place the odds at this happening? Like, that we're actually going to give blood in some center and they're giving it to people showing symptoms? Like, is that
the odds? I think the odds of it happening are good. I think. So let me say, I want to say the odds of it happening are, in terms of like going forward with a trial.
No, in terms of this becoming therapy while this pandemic is raging on.
That's a great question. I think that really depends on how soon it can happen, because if it's delayed enough that it's not happening until the fall, I think it's a lot less likely, because then maybe people are thinking about other things, or, we're so socially distanced by then, or everybody has it and we're headed toward like herd immunity where basically everybody's gotten it.
Right.
So I'd really be guessing here. But I think given the reputation of the people that are leading the team, the number of institutions that are on board, the emergency situation here, I'd say 60% maybe, if I have to think of a figure off of the top of my head, that this will be tried, because I think of anything that's being proposed, it's incredibly likely to be safe because so many of these are sort of known, right? Like things that are already in place for blood transfusions. And so I think it may be held up less than normal because so many of the steps already have proven safety, basically, which will be a higher hurdle. There are a lot of clinical trials that are being rushed in, a lot of them in China, for antiviral drugs. And I think those will be more likely to have to go through sort of the normal more rigorous approvals because the safety might not be as established.
I feel like your book just came alive. Like it's right. It's a story of how things happen, and now it's happening.
I was, I set it up for, this was part of the publicity plan. I thought we just we want to be hitting its stride for a global pandemic when nobody can go to their local bookstore. It was really interesting. I mean, obviously I sought out Arturo because I learned in my reporting that he was this incredibly interesting person. So it's not a big surprise to me that when something like this hits, he has these novel ideas coming from things that other people have sort of long forgotten. But we're essentially in a pre-vaccine age for all that matters right now. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to for a little while.
Okay, so now we're going to do the hardest pivot in the history of media, where
wait, let me do an even harder pivot first to bring it back to basketball. And is this the equivalent, essentially, this plasma treatment of COVID-19 at its worst right now is last year's Phoenix Suns? Is this treatment basically replacing Mike James with Ricky Rubio? You're not making the playoffs necessarily. You're not a championship team. It's not a vaccine. You're not curing it, but you are watchable, and it's much less devastating.
That is
watchable.
Watchable. Yeah, this is a highly watchable treatment. Yeah, no, perfect analogy. I don't know what to say. That was very. I applaud that effort.
Wins above replacement.
No, do you want to?
That's right. No, that's a good one. I like the wins above replacement idea. Right. I mean, if it works super well, it could be like a vaccine, and that it would inoculate people before they get it. But a lot of stuff is. I don't want to be jumping ahead and making prophecies, but I think
we said that about Rubio too.
I think it's more promising than the Suns. I'll put it that way. But again, the Suns aren't losing any ground right now. So.
Wow. There's in a pandemic, you want to say to yourself, the sun still comes up tomorrow. And Noah's literally worried about the sun's coming up tomorrow.
Man.
Okay, so we nailed that. David is going to hang out until he needs to parent. You have how old is you?
Just turned one.
Just turned one.
Yeah.
That happened fast. So hopefully there'll be some screaming. And hopefully it's from your house.
Yeah, great. Hopefully.
I'm going to introduce my kids now because they're going to make lunch. All right, come over here. This is Duncan. Hi, Duncan.
Hi, Duncan.
Get in there. There's Molly.
Hi.
Hi, Molly.
Hey.
Duncan's been making us lunch all during our social isolation period. So making tacos every day. If we're going to do that again, but this time Noah's going to boss him around. And Molly's going to make everything look awesome by logging in with a second account with the cool second camera footage, close up of the chopping or whatever it is.
Nice.
I like it. Bossing him around is wrong, but yeah.
I have a question for Molly. What's going on with the college search now? No more campus visits,
well,
right?
we were supposed to do a big, huge Boston tour over spring break, but every single school is canceled.
Yeah.
So it's a little on hold right now. Online research to the best of our ability, and we'll take advantage of summer if that happens. Hopefully.
Great. I like it. Positive outlook.
All right, so Noah, do you want to look in our fridge? Is that what we want to do?
Yeah, let's do it.
We organized it yesterday.
Wait,
perfect.
No, not yet.
Do it.
I need the ID.
Oh.
But yeah, for those watching this right now, basically I think the reason Henry had me on is that I've been my wife is actually successful and famous, and we've been kind of quarantined in home, and so we've been making these sort of live videos and tutorials teaching people at home how to cook with things they have in their pantry.
Pantry.
So, yeah, it's called Don't Panic Pantry. We do it every day live on my wife's Instagram feed at Eliza S. ILIZAS, I can spell. And then I post the recipes on my Instagram in advance. And it's all about just getting people to stay home, not go shopping, flatten the curve, and figure out how to make food with what you have on hand. And in this case, how to make better versions of stuff.
Noah's wife is in Spencer Confidential, is that what it's called?
Yes, she's on in Spencer Confidential, the new Mark Wahlberg movie has been #1 in the world on Netflix.
It's unbelievable.
It's a very cool movie.
So
She has,
did you run lines with her?
Yeah, for the audition I did, but once, yeah, it's funny. Like, you don't realize like how much people who do any acting at all, like how many auditions you go out for. And so like I'll be watching a movie on a plane and be like, why do I know all the lines from this scene? And I realized that I like read it in an audition with my wife for some weird random movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's super angry the whole movie, yelling at people, and then at one point, I guess I'm not supposed to curse in front of my children on TV. She's like, I want you to buy me a whole fucking lobster.
That is correct.
That was good. I like that Molly just went off screen for the curse.
That
I'm pretending I'm not
You guys
here.
have never heard me curse before, right? Okay, do you want to take that in the fridge with Duncan and you guys can shop and Noah can direct you?
So
How's that sound?
Let's do it.
There you go.
All right. So you're going to see this. So this is.
Is there a way to make Molly's screen the big one? How do we do that? Do I just click it? That is very small.
Can you?
Is it really small here? Let's get a little closer.
You need sound on. You don't have sound on Molly.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a way, Judy, to make Molly's screen the one that goes big on on the main screen?
So, yep.
If I'm talking, I think it'll make it big.
If you mouse over it and it'll say pin video. Do you see pin video? If you like.
Pin video.
There you go.
Aha. There we go. All right.
Yeah.
We're in there.
Okay.
Well, you've got eggs, which are obviously great in tacos. Are those like pickled onions in that little jar? Oh, that's great. I was going to have you guys maybe pickle some onions today, so that'll be great.
Okay, well, get out that little other jar next to it. That's something that we only have that because we know you.
Oh, yeah. Togarashi is a great thing. There you go. What is in that? Is that like starter? You guys making bread?
Yeah, that's starter.
Kimchi, nice. Do you guys want to do like weirdo Roy Choi kimchi tacos?
Up to you, D. What do you want?
Beans are great. Definitely take the beans out.
Beans. Bring the beans.
We have a lot of other beans in cans.
Yeah, how many people are we
4
feeding
people.
today? 4 people? Yeah, you'll need more beans than that.
Avocados. Look at that.
Yeah, avocados are great. Maybe we'll make like a little avocado salsa to put over the top, and then we'll kind of fry up the beans. You got limes in there?
Yeah,
Is that-
I think so.
Yeah, grab a few of those limes.
This is pretty impressive.
How is your
Noah might
family
need a
on
challenge.
on spice tolerance?
Oh yeah, we like spice. Yeah, we're good on
Yeah.
spice.
What do you got? Do you have dried chilies, fresh chilies, any kind of a spicy element?
Yeah, I'm gonna work on that.
I think we have a can of diced chilies in the cabinet.
Excuse me, sorry, I had something in my throat there. Okay, and then obviously tortillas would be great for your taco making needs. Is this the sound of everyone logging off the show? Those will be interesting. That's definitely going to be a lot like fruitier than like a Mexican spice, but we can definitely make it work because that's part of the point is use what you got. Onion is great. And then you're going to want some kind of a fat, I think, to like cook your beans in, whether it's some kind of like a corn oil, canola oil, lard would be great if you wanted to go that route. I'm assuming you
We
guys
have
don't.
Olive oil, definitely.
Let's do it.
For canola oil, we do have.
Yeah, let's do the canola. It's a nice neutral one. Perfect.
Onions and stuff over here.
And then
Okay.
while we're waiting, go to the stove real quick, and then get that cast iron going over high heat, and just let it start getting really hot. Yeah, put the middle one on high heat, and then take the one on the back and put that over like medium heat. I'm going to show you a little trick for how to reheat tortillas to make them kind of feel extra good. This is probably the most useful trick I'll teach you today. Something I learned from the great Kenji Lopez Alt over at Serious Eats. And a little fun fact about cast iron skillets is they take a lot longer to preheat than you'd expect. If you look at like a thermal map of a super nerdy of a preheating cast iron skillet, for the first couple of minutes, it just looks like a ring of heat precisely where the flame is, and it takes a while for it to actually distribute. But once it distributes, it maintains the heat really well. So a good trick if you're cooking at home in general with cast iron is you can even just throw it in the oven for a little while first, but it's good to give it some time to preheat.
Cool.
Little fun fact.
All right, do you have
so,
a link to a heat map of a cast iron skillet that you can drop in the chat? Just saying, I would like to look at that.
Henry, have we proven whether the hot hand exists in cast iron skillets?
It's about to exist.
Wait, I was serious though. I want to look at that if you have a link for.
Yeah, I'd have to find it. I gotta.
Okay.
Where did I read about that?
Anyway, I'll look it up.
Welcome
Sorry,
back
just
to
we had some
anecdotal
idea.
science. So then let's take that onion and let's give that a kind of a nice little dice. So what I think we're going to try to do is we're going to take our beans and we're going to basically fry up. We're going to kind of make like a halfway between a refried bean and like a loose black bean. When you smash them up a little bit, it gives it some of that kind of texture you want that makes it a little bit creamier and a little bit better to eat, and it kind of holds together better, but you still get some of the whole chunks in there too. And then, yeah, just kind of cut it up into a nice small dice, or as small as you're willing to do. You can be pretty loose with this. And then
Well, you wanted more beans?
more, if you're feeding 4 people, yeah, I want you guys to have enough food. Yeah. Do you guys want some eggs in your tacos too? You want to just make a pretty straight ahead black bean taco?
Right?
Yeah. Let's do eggs.
And then if you're doing the eggs, then I would say maybe grab a little dairy from the fridge, a little splash of milk or something like that, or half and half or cream if you got it, to kind of fluff the eggs up a little bit. And then let's see. Yeah, sometimes I feel like the equation for food is basically quality equals effort plus dishes. So depending on like how deep you guys want to go on this stuff, but I think we'll do a pretty loose one today. So set those aside now. Let's maybe cut up some of those tomatoes. That looks like a good idea. We'll do a nice little handful of those.
You've rinsed?
Yeah, they're good to go.
Yeah, I would say maybe just let's quarter those. And then we'll just kind of toss those with some of the lime and salt and some of the chilies and some of the avocado. And we'll make a little kind of, actually, you know what? It might be a little big. Cut them a little smaller. Maybe cut them one more time in half. So what is that, eighths? Yeah,
Yeah.
that checks out.
Just like bossing children around from afar is like a really cool job.
I mean, when they're doing it and enthusiastic about it, it seems great. It seems like most of the time it wouldn't work, but
Have you had,
in this
like,
case,
trouble
it seems
bossing
to be
children
working.
around in other settings? Like, has that been difficult?
I'm going to try to make this relatively uncomplicated so that we're not taking forever by people just watch us cutting tomatoes.
I can prep some stuff. Do you want me to juice some limes?
Yeah, Henry, do you want to juice some limes and maybe open up one of those avocados and take the pit out?
Yep.
So yeah, I think what we'll do today is we will basically fry up some beans. We'll get them nice and flavorful, and then we'll put those on a tortilla with this little kind of avocado tomato salsa we're going to make, and throw some scrambled eggs on there. And if you got some cheese to put on top, that is always a nice addition too.
I think we might have queso fresco.
That'd be awesome. That's perfect.
We have a little bit of queso fresco.
Perfect. You use what you got. Don't go shopping for more if you don't have to.
We now have multiple links to thermal imaging of cast iron skillets.
Oh, that is awesome. Can we throw it up on the big screen just for yucks?
I don't know. Maybe Judy knows how to do that.
That's
Yeah.
very funny. All right, that's probably enough tomatoes for now. Do that last one. It's just, we're going to make just a handful of tacos here. And then now let's get the tortillas out, and we'll do a quick little, what we're going to do with these tortillas is we're going to heat them up, and then we're going to basically let them steam in a towel. So the way you're going to do these, you'll do them one at a time. If you want to grab a little, a bowl that a tortilla would fit inside of and fill it with water, we're going to wet the tortillas, and then we're going to basically really high heat them up in the pan so they get kind of crispy and bubbly, and they'll look really cool. And then we'll throw them in the towel, and they'll kind of get covered, and they'll steam. So they'll kind of look like fresh made restaurant tortillas. This is one of my favorite tricks. This will be the thing that so yeah, just lay it in there and let it just get fully submerged in the water. Now lift it out and just lay it right in the high heat skillet, the one in the middle. Just lay it right in there. And it should hopefully be sizzling at this point.
Yeah, it's sizzling.
Now you'll want to get a spatula for this unless you're me and you just don't have feeling in your fingertips anymore. Ideally a plastic one rather than a metal, but if you got metal, that's fine too.
Oh.
Now wait a minute, give it about, a few seconds, and then give it like another 5 seconds, and then we'll kind of lift up the bottom a little bit and see if it looks like it's getting nice color to it. And if it is, then we'll flip it over.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
If it looks good to you on that side, then you can go ahead and flip it over. You can always flip it again too if you need to.
Like that?
Yeah, that's looking good. And you can even go even a little more than that if you want to. You can get a little bit of blackened bits is cool too. But this kind of brings refrigerator tortillas back to life in a really good way. And then grab like a dish towel that's relatively clean and lay it out on the counter. And you're basically just going to stack all your tortillas on it and then fold it over on itself to create a little steam. Perfect. And then, yeah, just kind of keep doing that with however many tortillas you're making until you like the way both sides of it look.
Now, how many eggs should I beat?
Are you guys eating just what, one taco each, or do you want more than one taco each?
Probably more than one.
All right, so I would say, I don't know, make, 8 eggs? 2 eggs a person? That seems like a proper amount of food for a meal. Thermal imaging is very funny. Do we want to multitask? Does somebody else want to be making tortillas so we can move on to the next step?
Yep.
So I guess make, 8 tortillas so everybody will have 2 tacos. And then once those are all done, you'll stack them up, cover it, and those will just kind of steam for a few minutes. And then we'll keep on rolling. So now we can take that avocado that we opened up, or theoretically opened up. And
Fine.
Here, I can.
Hard to find good help around here.
oh boy,
Molly, you want me to?
I'm happy to do this all day. I just feel bad for the viewers watching us very slowly make breakfast.
Noah, what's a good way to store avocados? Because I feel like I always get more than I can use because they're edible for like a day and a half, sort of. Do they?
Yeah, the trick to me with that in general is the moment it's as ripe as you want it to be to eat it, you put it in the fridge. So
Got
let it ripen as far as you want it to, and then fridge it.
Okay.
And then a great way, if they look like they're all going to go bad, is if you make an avocado salsa that's like kind of like a thin salsa with like a lot of lime and citrus. Whereas like a guacamole goes bad pretty quick and gets oxidized. If you make like a thin salsa with lots of chilies and lime juice and things like that, then it'll last a lot longer. So that's a nice way to kind of extend it out.
What am I doing with this avocado?
So now basically one of my tricks I like to do is, everyone's trick is you can take like even just like a basic butter knife or whatever and kind of cut it in the half into like cubes. So it kind of like, you're almost like scoring it. So you're kind of running it through within the entire thing. Oh, you already did it.
Yeah.
And then just take a spoon and just spoon it out into maybe a large bowl that you're going to mix all the stuff together in.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but as soon as this responsibility for tortillas was handed to me, I just was still beating eggs and burned the hell out.
Well, no, Henry, one of the best tricks in the world is that if you burn something, you just say that it's charred and people make it sound like it was on purpose.
It also disintegrated.
I may not have a saving word for disintegrated.
Should I do that to the other half too?
Yeah, why not? Let's do the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And then, yeah, we'll toss those in there, and then we'll chop up some of those Calabrian chilies. And I've never made a Calabrian chili avocado salsa, but I'll bet it'll be good.
We have a bunch of different chili, to be honest.
What else do you have?
There's a chipotle powder. These are just like red pepper flakes.
Let's do the Calabrian and the chipotle. That'll be a fun little experiment. And then
Cayenne.
you guys will lie to me and say it tasted good.
It's gonna be great. Oh my god, I did it again.
So yeah, Calabrian chilies are cool. They're like one of the classic things that like really good pizza places will have, like you know, the old legend like Di Fara in Brooklyn. Yeah, they're kind of like a fruity, floral, spicy chili that I like a lot.
So
now let's
well, don't get
Henry,
that on the camera too much, Mo.
so now yeah, let's take some of that let me take a pinch of that shallot you chopped up and throw that in there too.
Onion?
Onion, yeah, it looked like a shallot when you cut it, but yeah, just a little pinch like that. Perfect. Let's take those tomatoes and throw them in.
All of them?
Yeah, we're kind of making this. It's like a halfway between a salsa and a guacamole. And then let's squeeze some of that lime juice over it now, just so it doesn't start oxidizing. And just do a little bit to start, and then you can add more later to taste. You're gonna want it to be pretty citrusy because that's what I kind of like. But we'll keep adding more as we go along. And then let's drizzle in a little bit of olive oil in there too.
No, this has gotten extremely sticky. It's like it's lost its finish. With oil again a little bit.
Yeah, you can always throw a little oil in there. That's if it's sticking. Yeah, maybe it sounds like you're not treating your cast iron skillet properly, Henry. But you know, but yeah, worst case, you can also just basically fry them in a little bit of oil, and that'll work too. So now let's chop up some of those Calabrian chilies.
Henry, you need some load management for your cast iron skillet.
I mean, it looked fresh when we started, but it's been a hard game.
Noah, what's the best way to season a cast iron pan?
So basically, there's kind of this like myth that you're like never supposed to wash it, and you just like have like 100 years of like bacon fat built up into it, and that's actually not really what you want to do. The truth is, you can wash it with soap and water, but then what you want to do is basically once it's clean and dry, you want to and don't use any like abrasive sponges or anything. Is you want to basically put in a little bit of like a neutral oil, like a canola oil or vegetable oil, whatever it is, and almost like you're buffing it out. So you just kind of scrub in the oil until it almost looks like there's no oil left at all. And then you can literally just put it in the oven at like 250 for like an hour. And it kind of just seasons it and seals all that kind of protective coating on there. And I kind of just do that, you know, every once in a while when I'm cooking with it regularly. You can also, a good way to kind of clean gunk out of it is I'll throw a little kosher salt into the pan and then just kind of rub it out, and it kind of picks up a lot of the crap and oil in there. So those are my tricks for that. All right. So once those
How
are,
much Calabrian chilies do you want?
depends on how spicy. Let's start with that, and let's throw those in. And let's throw in a nice little sprinkle of that chipotle.
Why are you laughing? Oh, you laughing at me?
And then, excuse me, let's throw in some salt. You can be pretty aggressive with the salt. Sorry, my throat is getting a little froggy. And then, yeah, mix it around. You can kind of get it a little mashed up while you mix and let it kind of all start to congeal together. If it gets a little dry, add a little more olive oil, but the avocado should have some fat to it depending on how ripe it is. And then, you know, I would always say, you know, this is going to be a condiment, so you can be pretty aggressive with the salt and the acid in this. If you have any cilantro, that's a nice thing to throw in here too.
Do you have cilantro?
I don't know if we do.
And there you go. You can kind of keep it a little bit chunky. I would, and then just kind of fold it more than mash it at a certain point. So you get kind of varied texture. We're going to have a few textural variations in this one. And then, yeah, give it a taste. If it needs more salt, add salt. If you want it spicier, add more chilies. If you want more acid, add more acid. But we're also going to, I think, put the pickled onions on top of this taco too. So it'll be a nice little mix. How's that tasting so far?
I'm gonna add more lime.
Great.
Noah and Noah's like a food genius, and Kevin Arnovitz's super into food, and the three of us like made a meal together, and I got like no jobs. I was assigned nothing, and so as a courtesy, I was like supposed to toast some almonds, I think, and then of course since I was only doing one stupid thing, I took a phone call. I think I think I burned them, right? And
that sounds about right.
And I got fired, and that was the end of that. Yeah.
It all worked out, but we drank wine and had a good time. That's one of my favorite things when I hang out with basketball writers is asking them the question, what's your favorite story that you know is true that you can't report? And you get some fun ones out of that question.
But I didn't get any almonds for you. That's the downside, I guess.
Yeah, you want to
There's stories I heard that I won't repeat in front of your children.
take it off with your finger.
I'm
Don't
just
put it
kidding.
close right now. It's good.
All right. Now
That's
we're not
looking
supposed
good.
to, right? Let's use a different fork. I should get a different fork.
I'll take it off my hand.
Sorry, just keep moving.
And this has led me down a rabbit hole. I'm on the verge of buying a thermal imaging camera to attach to my iPhone. Seriously, I just put the link in the chat. I think we should spring for one for Noah.
David is not watching the food video in the least. He's just down a thermal imaging rabbit hole. All right, so then Henry, you want to do a little splash of milk or half and half or dairy of some kind into that egg just to give it a little extra fluff to it?
Yeah, I may have already done that actually.
Yeah.
Great.
We're good.
Do you not know?
I'm sure I did.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's start cooking the beans. So let's in that medium pan, we can you can turn the heat down on that hot one now if you're.
Yep, it's off. Do you want it on something else?
What's that?
Do you want it off or on some other temperature?
Turn it off for now. Maybe if it cools down enough, we can cook the eggs in there with the residual heat. But let's throw a little splash of oil into that medium pan. Just enough to kind of coat the bottom. You can go a little heavier than that. Beans eat oil like crazy. And then meanwhile, if somebody else wants to open that other can of beans and drain them, that would be great. And now we can add those onions into the pan.
Noah, what's your go-to comfort food?
I mean, I came from my mom's side is Italian. It's that thing where like every white guy in America associates the 12.5% Italian they are and takes it as a cultural identity. So I grew up cooking a lot of Italian food. So like, you know, cooking like pasta is definitely my go-to comfort food. But I love all kinds of stuff. I like to obsess over things and get good at it. Are those sizzling? I can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, good.
David,
So,
what do you like to eat?
Sorry,
What
I
do
was
you
zoned
like
out
to
for a
eat?
quick. What do I like to eat? I'm a pretty I mean, I love like Japanese food. When I visited Japan for some reporting, I could not wait to eat several times a day. Love sushi, love fish, but I don't meet many foods that I don't like. I just like some more than others. So I probably don't have like a sensitive enough palate to be a good chef because I'm not that discerning. But I would say the thing I'm focused on mainly with food is every year getting a little healthier, in what I'm eating, basically eating more real food. I eat a lot of baked sweet potatoes because when I'm just like running out of things, that's what I make for myself. And I'll put like cinnamon and cheese on them and stuff like that. But yeah, I love sushi when I have a chance to eat that.
you can go ahead and season those onions with a little salt now if you want. You can even throw in some of that, some more of that chipotle powder to get some of the flavor in there, and that'll kind of toast the spices nicely in there with the onions. So you're kind of looking for them, not really to get caramelized, but just to get kind of translucent and soft and starting to lose some of that raw taste. And then once those are going, yeah, those are going all right. You can even turn that up a little bit, I think, too.
Noah, what's your personal favorite sort of food to make?
I mean, I take like a really weird, deep pleasure out of making soup. Um, like if I have like a day off and I like go to the farmer's market and then come home and like have a bunch of produce that never touched a refrigerator, and then you just basically take like chicken parts and make stock from scratch and like cook beans from scratch and then like make a like slow all day minestrone soup while just kind of like listening to music and puttering around the house, and you like have a glass of wine and fall asleep for an hour and then come back, and then eventually and now you've got this giant pot of vegetable soup that you eat for like the next week and a half. Like that kind of stuff makes me very happy. Something about like chicken stock too is just like you can take these random things like these like bones and a couple of vegetables and then just very slowly like coax the essence out of all of them and distill it into this like golden broth is something that I just take great joy in.
Cool. That's like a whole like ritual involved with it and all the context and
absolutely.
relaxation and things like that.
David, if Noah asked you right now to produce some lard, would you be able to get that for him?
Wait, sorry, what about?
Noah earlier asked if we had some lard, and I was just wondering, and we didn't, but I was wondering if you would, if he asked.
If I would have, no.
No
when
lard.
You say produce, it sounds like you want him to excrete it.
Sounds like you want him to excrete it.
I thought like lard. No, and also I don't think I can pass it through Zoom, so I'm not sure. If that would...
Well, it's one of my kind of big rants lately is this, is I kind of tend to believe in the less and better model with meat, that you have higher quality meat less often, and that it's, we are sort of omnivores by nature. And so sometimes I'll buy like really high quality lard from the farmer's market and I'll just use it to cook things with. I don't add any meat to it, but you're sort of using elements of things like that are really high in quality. And I think that, really good lard is better for you than bad butter or bad canola oil. Canola oil, I'm not sure is good for you in any way at all.
Yeah.
So how are those onions doing? Are they kind of nice and soft now?
They're almost caramelized.
Perfect. Let's add the beans.
Beans on.
And add the other ones that you had in that little container too. Perfect. So now let's salt these up, and just for yucks, if you have any extra little bits of those Calabrian chilies laying around, let's throw those in too, just to give it a little. That way the food kind of you get the flavor in various parts of the various things. Yeah, give it a little rough chop.
Rough chop. All right. Shout out to Italy.
Say shout out to Italy. Oh yes.
I did. Yeah.
Shout out.
So then you can kind of turn the heat up a little more on this now. You want to cook out all that liquid, and then meanwhile, when you're cooking them, you can kind of start to mash it a little bit as you cook too. And the idea being that you want to kind of have like some whole beans, some broken beans, and you're kind of doing this hybridized kind of like a pot bean versus a refried bean.
How's this technique there? No, you like that?
It's looking good.
Okay.
I don't love you guys using metal on a cast iron skillet, but we'll work on that for another day.
I'm upset too.
You seem upset.
Would be better?
Wood is great. There's also some really good like high heat rubber spatulas that are great for this kind of stuff too.
What about this?
This wood right here.
No, do you have a
There you go.
recommendation? I'm about to buy a high heat rubber spatula. If you have a recommendation.
I don't. I think if you go on Amazon, I'm sure they'll tell you which ones suck. You ever try to like go way too deep on things like an electric tea kettle, and if you like read too long in the Amazon reviews, you discover that every single one like burns your house down and kills your family.
People are just so cranky on Amazon though. There's someone could like, and very often I find that like this is the wrong size. It doesn't fit at all. It's like, That's not a product review. You just ordered the wrong one.
That's it.
Also,
We
they
have a
lump
family
together.
friend who's super into doing Amazon reviews,
Oh yeah.
and she's like ranked in the nation as like one of their best Amazon reviewers, and they send her free stuff all the time.
Yeah. Now that we have a little free time, we could all get on that, I guess.
I feel like one of
How's the heat on that middle skillet?
Test that.
Like, put your hand kind of relatively over it.
It's a
Is
little
it-
warm. Pretty warm.
All right. So maybe if you have like a paper towel or a dish towel that you use to clean anything with, that's clean, and you want to sprinkle some like coarse salt in there and just kind of rub some of that char out, just to get any of those burn bits out. We can do that, and then just kind of use that almost like an abrasive to buff that gunk out, and then we'll kind of wipe the pan down, and we'll use that to make our eggs. I'm also like a big believer in like the value of like room temperature ingredients. Like, I think that room temperature vegetables are actually delicious. So I often will just cook things in the same pan and set them out and sort of build the dish with one pan in multiple stages, and then put it all back together and eat it all at room temperature. Because I think people have become obsessed with things being piping hot in this country, and I don't totally understand why. The idea, I guess, is built around the idea that the restaurant actually cooked it for you to order. And I get that, but some things, like you go to other countries, I guess this is not the right example to use right now. You go to other countries and they leave stuff out, and it often tastes awesome that way. Yeah, those beans are looking good. Taste those beans and see how they taste.
All right.
It probably could take more salt, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a little more.
Duncan's like a salt maniac. So you being a professional, encouraging him to add more salt, we're in very dangerous territory.
Hey, salt is an essential part of being alive.
It is.
You can turn the heat down on those beans now. Just leave them on low, and they'll just stay warm. And then let's turn that middle skillet down to like, I guess, like a medium, and we'll cook some eggs and make some tacos. I was about to rant about something. I forget what it was now.
You'll get it back.
Was it about sometimes in Amazon, if you go down a rabbit hole, you'll realize that they're lumping together like all the high heat rubber spatulas. So unless people identify the exact one that they are reviewing, you don't really know. That's a pain.
How do you guys like your eggs, by the way, before we start making them? Are you guys like a scrambled egg family? Do you like a really soft, fluffy, like runny scramble? Do you want like a hard cooked kind of like browned scramble? Do you want a runny fried egg? What do you guys typically like for an egg on a taco?
Any way they're prepared. Some other people have some more definitive opinions.
Well, I have already scrambled them, so that decides part of it, I guess.
Yes, that's a great point.
But I think we don't want them to be slimy.
Great.
You know.
Well, I have a feeling that I won't be able to direct you to do that much specifically anyway, so we'll see what happens.
That kind of puts us into a really specific.
So if those beans, by the way, are getting a little bit dry, which seems like they might be, you might want to add more oil into there. This is where you can use a little nice olive oil, and kind of it'll open them up a little bit. Yeah. Beans eat fat like crazy, and that's kind of one of the secrets to really good beans is you just keep adding fat to them. Same thing with like potatoes and starchy stuff like that.
Just give him the lard.
Give him the lard.
From David to everyone, Henry's an innovative guy, and I believe he could burn soup.
Well, someone asked. The question wasn't being answered, so I figured I should
what's the deal?
take it upon myself. There was a lingering question about whether you could burn soup. And, I was waiting for it to get answered, but.
Mm-hmm. It's fine.
All right. So now let's pour those eggs in. And then I think we want to do kind of a pretty consistent scramble. We can do the old Gordon Ramsay on-off heat technique where you kind of move them around, scramble them a little bit, move them off the heat, scramble them, move them back on, scramble them. So just kind of keep moving them around the pan, especially with how non-stick we've learned your cast iron is. And then we're going to salt them at the end. Sometimes when you salt eggs too early, it kind of makes them kind of release their liquid in a funny way.
So I'm mixing them?
Yeah, just kind of keep almost like, yeah, just kind of keep moving it all around. And you can be pretty aggressive with it. And then you can now kind of move the pan off the heat, off to the side, and then kind of keep moving them around so you're not getting constant heat on them. And then, yeah, kind of scramble them around with the residual heat now. And just kind of make sure you scrape those sides down. We're trying to get a relatively consistent texture, but it's going to have some nice little strides to it as well. At the end of the day, this is quarantine cooking, so as long as it turns into food that's edible, that's the important part. Really, the most important thing we all learned today is that is how to heat up a tortilla from a method I stole from somebody else.
I'm not sure I totally did learn that.
You'll see when you eat the tortillas. The steam kind of helps with them too. You can also do kind of a shortcut cheat version of that too, which is you just heat them up directly over the flames of your stove, and then the trick is just to move them into that towel afterward. The steam kind of helps keep them from drying out, and the extra moisture kind of gives them a little bit of bounce, but it keeps some texture on the outside edges. But we'll see. Maybe the tortillas will suck, but I think it'll work.
Should we put it back on the flame?
Yeah, and you can kind of move it back and forth between the flame on and off, and until it gets to the level of doneness that you like. And you can probably start seasoning the eggs now. They're getting more than halfway cooked.
Okay, I have a 1-year-old I'm going to go tend to.
You're going to miss them, the big money shot bite at the end.
Whoa. Well, maybe I'll try to come back if that happens. But
thank you, David.
Thanks. Yeah,
Thanks,
for having
David.
me. That was fun to watch. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
We'll
Noah.
talk soon.
Okay. See you. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
So those are getting close, but yeah, do it. That's the whole thing with Don't Panic Pantry, is getting people to make the food that they're willing to eat. As long as you're making food you're willing to eat, then you're doing it right.
Last week my college roommate was on.
Did we salt the eggs yet, real quick? Sorry.
Oh, did you salt the eggs?
Yes,
I did.
Perfect.
And
And yeah, just make sure each component tastes adequately salty. And those look like they're pretty much ready to go. I think you can start making tacos.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So I would to kind of do whatever you want, but maybe beans on the bottom as kind of like a concrete adhesive base, eggs next, and then do a little spoon of your salsa, and then do some of the queso fresco and top it with some pickled onions.
Never got a plate, too.
So Henry, where do you think Monty Williams stacks up in the royal jelly department?
I'll be honest, I don't think most NBA coaches are particularly have the time or skill set to do player development. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's mostly not how that job goes. It's mostly, you're an executive in charge of 40 people and you talk to the media, and maybe someone on your staff does player development, but it's seldom the head coach.
But don't they have to create an environment that allows for people to do that?
Yeah, they have to evaluate it, but I think it's they're the best of the best, those players, and mostly they're like, if you don't produce, just sit down. So mostly the player development, I think, happens outside of the team structure. It's changing a little bit, ooh, look at the lunch is looking good. But yeah, I don't think it's a common, there's some exceptions, right? I think Brett Brown was hired with that.
By the way, another way to eat this too is just put all the piles on your plate with a tortilla and just kind of make yourselves bites as you go. But that looks pretty good.
All right, there's an important moment, which is called the bite and smile. That's a real thing.
I'm aware of it.
All right, Duncan, you're on. No, you got to bite and smile. Yeah. These people have just been suffering through the process to get here. You don't have to sit down. It's cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Got all of that one. Oh, boy. Wow. Probably not.
How'd we do? That seemed like placating if I've ever seen it.
This is wow.
All right.
That's great. Okay. Kind of gross. Well, how we do, Duncan? We need a little report. 10 out of 10 would recommend is what he says. We've lost him now. He's just all in on the taco.
That's you know, I get so that's a dunk contest score. You're like, come on, you can't give a 10 on the first thing. There's nowhere to go from there.
Oh, you think we're gonna improve as our meal goes on?
No, just if you give something a 10, that just means that's the best thing you'll ever have in your life, and that certainly can't be true.
Let's just celebrate it. Let's celebrate it. Yeah. Oh, you're like, I'll tell you what just happened there is you just got a participation trophy and you don't like it.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right. Well, I feel like we've done some good work here today.
Yeah, I'm proud of us. I didn't get to bombard you guys with as many Suns questions as I would have liked, but Henry's not qualified to answer them, so it's
I don't really know what the hell's going on with. I literally don't think I watched a Suns game all year. I've not won. Yeah.
That is more than fair.
I know that they had DeAndre Ayton got a steroid suspension. Whoops.
That he did.
Yeah. Actually, I saw this study that if you take anabolic steroids, Olympic athletes taking anabolic steroids have often been banned for 4 years. And they're like, anabolic steroids are so effective that you're still better 4 years later than if you hadn't taken them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, how about that?
Let's do it.
25 games, I was like, oh, it's totally worth it. I'm not advocating PEDs. I'm saying the testing is a little sketchy. That's all. But anyway, listen, thank you so much, man.
Thanks,
Is there
Henry.
anything else you think we should do in closing? I feel like, do you want to take questions? Anybody got a question for Noah before he goes?
Sure, I'll happily take questions if anybody has any.
We always have Gerard, actually. This is the religion of the show. Judy, can we have Gerard? Maybe Judy had to go already.
He did say you missed out on some good Booker performances.
Let's see if this works.
Hey guys, what's up?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Are you hungry?
I am. Nice job, Abbotts, by the way. Good job on that, on those tacos. That's great. Question about the seasoning, the cast iron skillet. I missed that part. So can we go back to that?
Show has mad range.
Yeah, basically, a lot of times there's like a myth around cast iron skillets that like you're supposed to have it last in your family for generations and you never wash it once and it builds up this like
eat all that like pancake and whatever crap grease is on there and it just mixes all together.
Yeah, you're supposed to be eating like fat back from the 1800s. But the truth is you can wash it with soap and water, and that's totally what you probably should be doing. And then basically once it's dry, you just pour some oil onto it. And almost like you're buffing it with a towel and you're wiping it across the entire skillet until it looks like there's no oil on it anymore. Okay. And then you can basically just throw it in your oven at like 250 for like 30 minutes or so. And it kind of like seasons it and gets it all kind of this nice protective coating. If it's a new skillet, you want to do that like several times and kind of build it up and build it up and build it up. And the more you do that, the better it kind of ends up working out. So that's kind of the trick for it.
Is there not a way to do that with high-end LA farmers market lard?
Yeah, you can do it with lard. But you're probably better off with a neutral one. I mean, why add flavor?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you've thought this through. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an academic at heart who fell into being a chef and cookbook author. So I tend to view things from a relatively holistic, research-driven standpoint. I'm not just like one of those people who's just like came up in kitchens my whole life and is there to like show off my creative brilliance. My method of opening restaurants and writing books is what should exist that doesn't.
We're all dorks here.
Oh, really?
Me, right?
Trying to learn things, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, Gerard?
No, I'm good. Thanks, guys. I'm starving now, though.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, me too.
This has been easily the craziest show we've had. Big thanks to David for coming earlier, to Molly and Duncan Abbott for making us lunch, to Gerard for your question, and Noah.
Wait, no bite and smile from Henry to close the show?
The supply has already been decimated. There's not a waiting taco, so I don't want to make anybody wait any longer. But just imagine. Well, you saw Duncan take 2 bites and 2 smiles. I think that's maybe more than you wanted already. So
I'll take it.
All right.
Thanks, Henry.
See you guys.
See you guys.